Hello, neighbor. Thanks for representing me. I appreciate it.
Hi.
Madam Chair, you're talking to 1,000 C-suite workforce executives from companies that have operations literally all over the world. AI is very much on their mind. We know that AI is very much on your mind. You're going to be dealing with an avalanche of legislation. Where do you think we may wind up at the end of the year as a result of your work?
I'd have to have a crystal ball to fully answer that, but I can tell you where we're going. So we've had over 30 bills introduced here in California on AI, and we actually expect a few more. Given the process, there can be changes in legislation that result in additional pieces of policy that come forward. And we're trying to figure out where that all lands us. I think California really is poised to lead the country in regulating AI and making sure our communities feel safe in the AI they're interfacing with every day. People don't realize how much AI is already in their lives. It's not the future, it's here and now. And so we as a government feel the obligation to ensure safety and responsibility for all Californians. And we're hopeful that we can work with people across the country to provide some consistency across the regulatory landscape by leading first.
Madam Chair, what do you see as some of the biggest risks and benefits with AI in the employment setting, especially?
You know, I was just actually upstairs with the Bay Area Caucus, which is the legislators who represent the Bay Area region, where we're really leading in AI. And we were talking about this exact topic. And I think that one of the things we're really focused on is the risks to our communities. So, you know, I have a bill that focuses on bias and automated decision tools. So how are people interacting with these tools and how are they affecting them? And so in the employment setting, I think bias is one of the things that most concerns us. We've gone from a world when I entered the workforce where humans were making these decisions. Humans were reviewing resumes, they were making decisions, and now we live in a world where we have automated decision tools and AI doing a lot of that work. And so how do we ensure a future that is better than the past, that has less bias in those decisions? And that's really where we're focused right now in the employment sector. But in addition, we're worried about workforce. You know, we need to make sure that Californians have a future that is bright. And so how do we make sure that AI is really augmenting the work of Californians, making us better and more efficient and more effective in what we do, and ensuring that we're upskilling and preparing the workforce for the future that AI holds? And I think just like the advent of the internet, it can be a really bright future, but the government has a role to make sure that happens.
One of the bills you've proposed, Assembly Bill 2930, seeks to regulate automated decision systems and employment decisions. Can you tell us a little bit about that bill and whether you've had any conversations with the governor's office, if it might get passed?
Yeah, so I think that the approach that you saw come out of Europe and that we really want to take here in California is a risk-based approach. So focusing on the risks of the AI tools. And so in the employment sector, as you mentioned, we're really taking a look at this bias that could be potentially in our employment tools and other tools. The bill focuses on healthcare and housing and lending and spaces in which these automated decision tools could affect really consequential decisions, but employment being an important one of them. And the bill really asks both the developers and the deployers to make sure before they use this that there isn't bias in the tools. And I think it's not too much to ask. I think it's also, for the first time, setting up a framework that gives deployers some certainty that the developer has tested these tools before your clients and the people listening use them, which I actually think is a real benefit to a lot of the people who are watching today. And then your second question, which was, will it be passed and signed into law? I'm really optimistic. I think it is one of the greatest risks facing Californians today as it relates to AI. So it's one of the things we need to do first.
So you're speaking to many employment in-house attorneys and C-suite executives right now in our audience, and a lot of them want to know, what is the employer's role with respect to AB 2930, and how do you see the employer fitting into that equation?
Yeah, so I think if you buy a tool and the developer has developed that tool for the use that you are purchasing it and using it, that there's a role for the developer to really test it, to make sure the product they're putting on the market, which then is being purchased and used by many of your clients, is safe and bias-free. But we also know that tools are not necessarily static, right? So we have a situation where an employer or a deployer takes it and modifies the data set, right? These tools are as good as the data that goes into them, right? And so in that case, the employer would have a bigger responsibility. They've modified the tool that was tested by the developer. But if they deploy it in a way that is consistent with its design, then they know that it's been tested and they should feel safe knowing that it's bias-free. So it depends on, again, what the employer does with that tool. We can imagine circumstances where a large company might modify it, so that changes their obligation. And then, you know, I think the courts are really in a place where they're figuring out the role of how AI interacts with our laws today, much of what I'm sure your attorneys are grappling with. And we see courts really having to figure out how AI fits into laws that have been on our books for a long time. But I think the thing that California holds true to our values is for a long time we've ensured that there is protection from discrimination in employment. And we believe that should be true, whether it's a human making that decision or an AI tool.
Part of your district covers Silicon Valley. Are you hearing from your constituents at all that AI legislation would stifle innovation and growth, or even that it might give a competitive edge to other countries? What are you hearing from your constituency?
I mean, if you look at the numbers, the Bay Area continues to lead the world in this innovation, and that's not going to change. Our culture, our educational institutions really have put the Bay Area on the map as a leader in innovation, and I don't think that's going to change. And it's a real interesting question because I don't think everybody agrees. You know, many people think that this innovation is only going to happen, the adoption will only happen if people trust it, right? And so creating regulatory schemes that allow consumers to trust these products will actually allow innovation to go further. Sure, there are people and there are companies that think that we shouldn't do anything, that we shouldn't regulate, we should allow innovation to happen. I'll say that I think that was what we did at the advent of the internet, and we've learned a lot from social media, that we let it innovate to a place where it's done real harm to our children and to our democracy. And so I think we need to look at that and say, we can find a balance, right? We can get regulatory certainty, which as a former regulatory lawyer myself is critical for your clients, right? The last thing companies want is to not know what the future holds, right? And so I think giving regulatory certainty and hopefully consistency across markets is something that can benefit innovation in the long run.
So you had mentioned the sheer number of AI bills already proposed this session, and you are the chair of the Privacy and Consumer Protection Committee. Will your specific committee be hearing all AI bills this session, or what is the method to the madness, so to speak?
So bills are often referred to multiple committees, right? So we have AI bills in the election space that are being double referred to my committee and to elections. We have an education bill on AI that's being double referred to education and my committee. But we are trying to move all the AI bills through my committee so that there's some consistency across the policy. For example, the definition. You know, the thing that has held up the legislation on AI over the past few years has been we can't even agree how to define AI, right? So one of my bills that I proposed is just a definition. Let's all agree what this is and how we're going to define it in code so that we have some consistency to allow for compliance to work. And so our goal is to move them all through my committee to make a scheme that actually functions together rather than having piecemeal policy and regulation that doesn't work as a cohesive framework, because people like you will have a really hard time helping advise your clients unless we do so.
Well, we thank you for that. So given the sheer number of bills, many of which will infect the employer community, is there an opportunity for collaboration between the public sector and private sector on defining AI or having any kind of involvement in the language of these bills?
We invite that. I mean, there's no question that there isn't a single expert right now on AI, right? We're all new to it. And we're working with people across academia and civil society and the private sector to really make sure that we are listening to everybody and understanding the perspective that they bring to the table. And the work you guys do every day with compliance. And our laws are only as good as the compliance that follows, right? And so if we pass laws that are impossible, and I used to be an environmental regulatory lawyer, so talk about a complicated compliance scheme across local, state, and federal law, you know, it isn't effective for our communities. And so we want that engagement. We want to be talking. And so one of the things we did recently was we had an informational hearing on artificial intelligence, and we focused on that definition. And we had folks from the EU come and talk about their definition. We had folks from the federal government talk about the NIST definition to try to figure out what was the best way for California to move forward in that definition to be consistent across markets. But, you know, I think you guys have expertise to bring to that table as well.
We'll take you up on that for sure on behalf of our clients.
Yeah.
Another issue that I've been focused on for at least the last 10 years is these changes that are taking place with respect to the workplace through robotics and AI. And we coined this phrase called TIDE, technologically induced displacement of employees. That's happening in real time. And AI is going to contribute to that. And a lot of people are afraid, and some see this as a great opportunity for people, for example, with disabilities to give them more accommodations. What's your view of this displacement issue? Is that also part of your agenda?
It is, and it's really critical. But I think that we need to stop for 1 second and talk about augmentation, right? I mean, AI is displacing people and we need to be paying attention to that. But there's ways in which it's augmenting current work that is so exciting, right? I often talk about my mammogram, which is now not just read by a radiologist, but they're using AI tools to detect breast cancer sooner. That is super exciting. That radiologist is there, their job continues, but they have a tool from AI that makes them more successful, right? So it's those kind of examples that I think are so exciting and we can't forget. You know, as we talk about AI in the classroom, our teachers are doing the best they can in giving one-on-one attention to their students, but it's really hard. So to have AI tools that are augmenting the work of our teachers to provide tutoring, to provide education to our kids, not displacing the teachers, nobody is suggesting that, but more one-on-one attention to reading help, et cetera, is really exciting. And so that's a piece that I think we need to remember. And then the displacement piece. So our hope, and what I think we want to focus on as a government, is how do we upskill folks, right? I mean, we have a real workforce problem as it relates to AI. So how do we get California's workforce ready so we continue to be the innovation center that we can be with the workforce ready to do so, and make us better, right? When you think about the call wait times you have when you want customer service, right? I had a customer service experience recently where I think I was interacting with an AI tool and it wasn't great, right? So I don't think that it just being an AI tool is helpful, but is there a way to make it more efficient so my wait time is shorter? That's an exciting opportunity. So how do we also make sure we see it come to life in a way that makes our experiences better, but allows for those humans to do the amazing things they do every day?
You had mentioned that AI is here and now, and we are already dealing with it whether we like it or not. As a former professor and educator, what would you tell your students about the future of AI? Or better yet, what would you tell your kids about the future of AI?
Yeah, it's here. And I do actually think it's really exciting because I think that the opportunities it provides, if we do it right, are really incredible. And so how do we get them educated in a way that allows them to be a part of that future, right? I think the first reaction in education was, let's keep it out of the classroom. And we're moving to a place where educators are now saying, no, we need to actually bring it into the classroom. We need students to learn how to interface with it, how to use it and still maintain and gain skills that are so valuable. And I think that's a really exciting move. So I think the idea that I would want to impart upon my kids and my students is don't be afraid of it, embrace it, and figure out how it can make us better, how it can improve things. You know, I use the example of the breast cancer screenings. That's incredibly exciting. Think across the medical field of the innovations that are ahead of us that will save lives. Let's hope our students are a part of that future.
On behalf of Littler and Littler's WPI, we really appreciate your being with us today, but really for your openness, because frankly, not everybody in your position is so open, and we look forward to continued dialogue. But we give you the last word. What do you want to leave our 1,000 attendees with to think about?
You know, I'm just really, like I said, I'm very excited for the future. And one of the things that I think people should know is that we are working across government. That although right now we have a Congress that isn't passing many laws, and I think that ideally, as again, a former lawyer that had to deal with compliance issues, I would love to see Congress take care of this so we had a consistent framework across the country, but we don't see that happening. And so we have a working group across red, blue, purple states of legislators. Somebody asked me recently if it was bipartisan, and I said, to be honest, we've never talked about our party affiliation. I assume so, but I don't know the answer because it's irrelevant, right? But we are talking about how do we define this across jurisdictions? How do we move in a consistent way to make the markets in America work? We have the EU set up an office in San Francisco focused on tech policy, and we're partnering with them to understand the EU AI Act. We're our own jurisdiction. We're going to pass laws that protect Californians, but we can do it in a way that makes sense. And we are working very hard to do that, and I'm hopeful that's where we'll land at the end of the year.
Well, we'll be following it very, very closely, as will our clients. So thank you for all of your efforts and for taking this on. It's an enormous responsibility.
Thank you.